Thanks very much, Hugh. Thanks to Angus Australia for having me here today. I'm going to use a few notes. I'm not as smooth as these other guys. But as Hugh said, I'm the Business Development Manager with AuctionsPlus. We are effectively an online sale yard. We sell all sorts of things, but predominantly we sell sheep and cattle. And we sell commercial cattle and we sell stud stock cattle every day of the week. What I want to talk to you about today, though, is the opportunities that are out there for online livestock sales. And I'm going to break it down into 4 parts. First of all, I'm going to talk to you and tell you a little story about really good bread. Then I'm going to talk to you about the fear of missing out, or FOMO. I'm also going to talk to you about competitive tension and how these 3 things then tie into online auctions being a great tool for you guys to help market and sell your cattle. So first of all, what does really good bread have to do with selling Angus cattle in online auctions? This is my story. About 10 minutes walk from where I live in Sydney, on a Saturday morning, something amazing takes place every week. In a small back street, out of a nondescript building, no red door, no signs, no advertising, at 4 a.m. in the morning, a line starts to form from that door and snakes around the block with people lining up. It's quite incredible. What are they lining up for? They're lining up for bread. Out of this one little door, 2 elderly gentlemen sell the best bread that I've ever eaten. Now, when I first moved to Sydney, someone told me about this bread shop and they said, you've got to get down there. And I said, what time do I have to be there? And they said, you've got to be there at 4 a.m. on a Saturday morning. I said, nah, not going to happen, mate. Anyway, I tried this bread. Now I get out of bed at 4 a.m. on a Saturday and I walk the 10 minutes in the dark down there and I line up with these other people to get my bread. It's crazy. Anyway, the last 2 weeks I've missed out on my bread, because the line's getting longer and longer and they only sell a certain amount and I don't get there early enough some days. So as the line grows and as more and more people hear about this bread, more and more people keep missing out. So last week something crazy happened, and I believe I've witnessed the evolution of something really interesting here. When I arrived, people were no longer lining up around the block. They had started mobbing the doorway. And no longer were they waiting one by one to be served. They were now waving money and yelling out what they were willing to pay for that bread. Now, I used to pay $3.50 a loaf. That was the going rate for a small loaf of sourdough. That pretty much gets you through your weekend and Monday. Worth it. Last week, the bidding started at $4.50 a loaf, so I'm already out of the market. Anyway, I'm at the back of this mob. People are jostling. I've got a headache from Friday night. It's 4 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. Should be in bed. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to go 3 weeks without missing my bread here in a minute if I don't get some bread. So I can hear $3, $3.50, $4, $4.50. Bread's going. There's money changing hands left, right and centre. I've done something crazy. $10, I said. I hand over a $10 note. I get a loaf of bread. I'm stoked. I walk home, put the bread away, and I go back to bed. But I've got my bread, so I'm happy. Now, what I think we've just witnessed, or what I think I just witnessed, was the evolution of an auction system which was born out of the demand for a really top quality product and high competition, a lot of buyers in one place, all wanting the same thing. So that got me thinking, how do I tie that in with my talk here today? Well, that's what I'm going to talk to you about now. A couple of things. As I touched on, we've got a quality product, as do yourselves as Angus breeders. There's only a limited supply, and as Ben and Sam have just alluded to, there are obviously a lot of opportunities and a lot of people lining up to buy our cattle, hopefully. So the main reasons that I think we have seen, probably particularly in the last 2 to 3 years, a shift, or maybe not a shift, but certainly an increase from my point of view in online livestock sales, I think there's a number of different reasons. The first one is competition, and that's the key. That is, I suppose, the main point that I would like to hammer home today, is that competition is the key. That is what drives a competitive market. That fear of missing out. Am I going to get my bread? No, I'm willing to pay more for it because I might not get it. That's the competitive tension, and I'll talk a little bit more about these points as we go through. The next one is control. You as a producer, if you're producing commercial cattle or you're producing kilograms of beef or embryos or stud cattle or straws or whatever it may be, there's been a significant time, money, significant investment across the board to produce that product, to get it to the end, to the finished product. What you don't want to do is lose control over the marketing and how that product is marketed. You need to cash in. You really want to make sure that you can maximise your return on that investment when that point in time comes. So control is a big one. Convenience. That's the other one. This is, I suppose, a little bit from a buyer's point of view as well as a vendor. But where else can I access 10,000 head of cattle on my mobile phone or on my tablet? Theoretically, if there was a sale running today on AuctionsPlus and I was registered, I could be bidding on my mobile phone whilst listening to me talk about bidding online in online livestock sales. That's the convenience. Cost effective. We operate on a low cost base. Just as important as ensuring you receive as much as you possibly can for your commodity, whatever that be, is trying to manage the expenses and the overheads and the running costs of producing that commodity. And the marketing and the sales, that all adds up. That all comes off the bottom line. That comes off your cream. Product integrity. This is, again, a very, very important one. Product integrity ensures that we have a quality product. Now, I don't know what the product integrity or what the protocols are at the bakery that I go to, but it's excellent bread, and I know what I'm getting every time I go there. What we aim to do with online livestock auctions at AuctionsPlus is provide that same type of integrity, provide as much information as we possibly can for an online buyer. Animal performance. Effectively, the vendors, the producers, yourselves and the buyers are connecting directly, so to speak. So they are purchasing and you are selling cattle direct out of your paddock to another paddock. We all know and we all understand the benefits of performance in that type of transaction. Accessing all markets. This ties in with competition, and I'm going to repeat myself a little bit here today. You'll be sick of me hearing talk about competition. But accessing all markets. It's opening up as many markets and as many possible buyers for that one commodity in one place at one time. That is, I suppose, another key goal of AuctionsPlus or of online auctions. And risk management. I also think it's a really good tool, and I'll talk more about this later, for managing some of those risks associated with marketing and with sales of livestock. So what is competition, competitive tension, and FOMO? So I've got a definition for you when it comes to competitive tension. Competitive tension is defined as a strained state or condition resulting from forces acting in opposition to one another. That competitive tension between two buyers is what drives your return. That is the key to an auction, as you all understand, that is the key to a marketplace. A marketplace where competitive tension exists is one where buyers know that they will miss out unless they make their best offer. That is the key. That is what we see as underpinning the auction. The next one is FOMO. Now you'll have to forgive me because this definition has come out of the Urban Dictionary. I'm not too sure if it's a registered dictionary. There's some interesting definitions in there. But this one here gives us the definition of FOMO, or the fear of missing out. So a state of mental or emotional strain caused by the fear of missing out. And it gives an example down the bottom here of evolutionary biology. An omnipresent anxiety brought about by our cognitive ability to recognise potential opportunities. For example, The brothers had last slice FOMO as they stared at what was left of the pizza. I can relate to that. How do we aim to maintain this competitive tension? The first one is offering a critical mass of cattle and buyers in one place at one time. On average, we have roughly 300 buyers logging into our eastern states cattle sales every week. The other one is anonymity. So nobody knows who's online, who they're bidding against, how many people are online, what they are all willing to pay for those cattle. That is also a key. Accessing all markets. This is just a little example that I came up with, but what happens when we have these four competitors bidding on one pen of cattle? Again, it drives the competitive tension. That's what drives the auction competition. Now, an example that I'm going to use, and it's not exactly close to home, but I suppose it gives you a good understanding of the bidding footprint and who's competing against who and who's actually bidding. But in November last year, we sold a number of large lines of feeder and export cattle out of the Northern Territory off Hayfield Station. And on those lines of cattle, we had, eventually, they went to a northern exporter out of Darwin. Now, on those cattle, we had exporters from Western Australia, Queensland and the Northern Territory all bidding on those. We had processors from Queensland and WA bidding on those cattle, and we had restockers, believe it or not, from New South Wales and Queensland also bidding on those cattle. So that, I suppose, is a really good example of that bidding footprint and what drives that competitive tension. Now, control, I touched on this before. You as a producer have put a lot of time and effort into producing what you do, good Angus cattle or good genetics or good beef, whatever that may be. Online marketing gives you the opportunity to strategically target certain markets, whether that be feeder sales, export sales, bid the grid sales, our daily commercial cattle sales, online stud sales, bloodline sales. There are a number of different opportunities, a number of different ways that you can target a market and go for that market. You have the ability to set a reserve, which is a big one. It helps to avoid that volatility. And you set the terms of delivery. So you can decide when and where those cattle will be delivered to. Most of the time they're sold on farm, so you deliver them at your front gate. You can sell now for delivery at a future time, so forward contract sales, and I'll show you a little bit of information about some forward contract sales that we've run specifically with Angus cattle down the track. It gives you a lot more options, I suppose, as to how you wish to market those cattle. Convenience and performance. Again, we're offering buyers the opportunity to peruse a menu of livestock from around Australia in one place at one time. Typically our sales run for anywhere from 40 minutes to around the hour mark, and we will sell this Friday, I think it's just over 9,000 head in under 4 hours. So a buyer can log on from anywhere in Australia, look at those cattle, look at photos, videos, a full assessment that's been completed by a professional assessor, and then decide whether or not they'd like to bid on those cattle. Direct access. It's offering you direct access with a purchaser without having to have previously established that relationship, if that makes sense. So what I mean by that is, I touched on it before, they're purchasing the cattle directly out of your paddock. Until the reserve is met, the cattle stay in the paddock. If the reserve isn't met, you have the opportunity to then re-offer them a week later. Performance. Again, this is an obvious one, but when cattle are coming out of a paddock, going into a paddock, there's no layover, the opportunity for them to pick up latent diseases and sicknesses and deal with the stress of mingling with other animals and layovers cattle yards and a four-day turnaround before they're back in a paddock. A lot of those issues, in many cases, are avoided. And anywhere, anytime, I've already touched on that one. Mobile phone, tablet, you can bid from anywhere. It's cost effective. So there's no yard fees. The buyer pays the freight from the point of delivery, which the vendor sets. There's a free re-offer, and you only pay a listing fee. So we aim to, I suppose, be as cost effective as possible for a producer wanting to market their cattle to as many people as possible. Product integrity. So around Australia, we have just under 1,000 sheep and cattle assessors based all over the countryside. These sheep and cattle assessors are categorised under 3 different levels. Level 1 being the highest rating. They have to undergo a fairly stringent process and a review process from time to time as well. So they sit an online exam with AuctionsPlus. They are trained and they have to complete parallel assessments with other accredited assessors, a certain amount over certain types of breed and certain types of stock categories to gain that accreditation. We then monitor those assessments every day of the week. So we've got a market operations team who monitor the quality of those assessments that are coming across the sales day in, day out, which takes up a lot of time, but it's obviously the key to a successful marketplace is making sure that people are happy to get happy with what they receive, that they're getting what they pay for. That is very important. Sometimes that doesn't happen, unfortunately. And so what we have in place, we also have a system of industry overview and credibility whereby we manage a misdescription process from start to finish. And if that misdescription can't be resolved between the selling party and the purchaser, then we put together an arbitration panel of our top assessors, independent and from our shareholders, and then they preside over that case, and the outcome is final and seems to be really well adhered to and regarded by all who use the system. So now I'm going to get a little bit, I suppose, AuctionsPlus specific, and just give you a brief overview of how it actually happens. So, for example, on farm, you'd like to sell your cattle. You decide you want to sell your cattle online or in AuctionsPlus. You contact your local agent. You have to sell through an agency. We rely on the agency network because we only charge a listing fee. We don't handle any of the cash transactions. There's no Delcra there. We rely on the traditional agency network and method to guarantee that. So you contact your agent. He comes out on farm. He completes the assessment of the cattle. Now, these assessments are, as much as we possibly can, are based on the Meat Standards Australia and the, Ben might be able to correct me here, but I think it's the old AusMeat languages. And they are based on objective measurements rather than subjective commentary, I suppose. So weights, dentition, fat scoring, age, the breed composition, bloodlines. You can register links to the ABRI so that people can see the pedigree of those animals, grazing conditions, the veterinary information, as much information as you possibly can provide, basically. That information, as well as photos and videos, is compiled by the assessor on farm. They then take that information back and upload it into the AuctionsPlus system. What we do then is we build our catalogue. So if we're talking specifically about catalogues, cattle catalogues, we build that catalogue post 5 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon for our Friday Eastern States cattle sales, and those catalogues are then distributed nationally to around 4,000. I think it is for just over 4,000 for our registered cattle subscribers. We then hold the online simultaneous or sequential auctions. Now, when I say simultaneous or sequential, simultaneous is essentially just the helmsman style auction, and that is how we sell 99% of our livestock on AuctionsPlus. We believe that that gives every buyer and every vendor the best opportunity at receiving or the best opportunity at walking away from that marketplace happy with the outcome. So a vendor receiving as much as they can and a buyer getting what they want at a price they're willing to pay for it. Sequential auctions. We also run a lot of stud sale auctions. So last year we ran, I think it was just over 100 special sales, interface stud sales and wholly online seed stock auctions. So working with producers just like yourself, many of whom would be in the room here today, we can come on farm and interface a stud sale, effectively opening up a whole network of buyers Australia-wide and enabling them to compete with buyers in the sale ring in real time. We can also live stream those as well. Post-sale, what happens? The agent invoices the buyer. As I said, we don't handle any of the cash transactions. The agent invoices the buyer directly. We provide all of the information that we collect when a buyer registers with AuctionsPlus, which is essentially what they would provide on a bid card. And then we help the selling agent manage that process right through to the end. I'm just going to run through a couple of graphs with you, which will give you an idea, I suppose, of Angus cattle and how Angus cattle have been performing on AuctionsPlus. So if we look at here, this is our total offering of cattle between April 2015 and May 2016. Hugh mentioned before, I think we sold 340,000 head of cattle last year. Of that 340,000 head of cattle, 177,000 head offered were 50% greater Angus content. So they are by far and away the most dominant breed on AuctionsPlus. If we take into account here Angus cattle with less than 25% Angus content, you can see that whole side of the pie chart there, we're well and truly over the 50% mark. %84 was the overall clearance rate in our online auctions last year. And if we look at that against Angus cattle, the first bar here, that's the average across all boards. So that's all breeds. Here we're talking 0% Angus, and here we are less than 25% Angus. If we work from here back this way, so cattle with 25% Angus or less right through to 100% Angus, the clearance rate is right on that 84% for the 12 months. The next couple of slides, they're pretty basic, and the main message that I suppose I wanted to demonstrate to yourselves is that you'll notice when we start looking at these average prices and these top dollars per head prices, this slide in particular is for joined and PTIC female Angus prices. But as the percentage of Angus content in those cattle rises, obviously so does the dollars per head average price and the top price paid for those cattle. The same goes here for cow and calf prices. We can see that across the board, $2,800 was the top price paid for a cow and calf unit last year on AuctionsPlus, and that just happened to be 100% Angus. Again, once the Angus content begins to increase, so does our average dollars per head, and accordingly the dollars paid, the tops per head. Here's the same graph again, but for steers. We've got a couple of purple bars in there. Just disregard those for a second because they also include Wagyu and Wagyu infused cattle. Predominantly, the Wagyu infused cattle are 9 times out of 10 when sold on AuctionsPlus are F1 Angus Wagyu cross cattle. So if we look at those prices again, we can see as that Angus content increases, so do the average prices. 309 cents a kilo on farm average price, right through to 332 cents a kilo. And these prices, as I mentioned, are all on farm. Same goes for the heifers. We can see there that the same correlation there, 282 cents up to 306 cents average, or 450 cents. 0 was a top price for the last 12 months on farm, cents per kg. I touched briefly before on forward contract sales and how they offer you the ability, or how that ties in, I suppose, with control. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's offering a product today and taking a price today on AuctionsPlus for a future delivery date that you as a vendor can set. So if you know that you may have the season behind you and grass on the ground, and hopefully all things going to plan, that you know where your break-even point is, and that price today means a profitable outcome for you at the end of the financial year, then why not lock in a price today? Just for example, like locking in an interest rate, or forward selling grain pre-harvest, or bulk buying diesel, for example. It's, I suppose, most importantly, as you guys would understand, is knowing where your cost of production is, knowing where that line in the sand is, and then hedging some of those variables to help manage those price fluctuations and cash flow issues throughout the year. It's just another tool, I suppose. So I'm coming to the end of my little presentation here, and I'll just quickly wrap up with a couple of stats before I start talking about bread again. So last year we sold 2.2 million sheep, we sold 340,000 cattle, we conducted just over 100 special sales and stud sales. Some of those were interfaced on farm. We now offer live streaming, audio and video. We've got a really small office. There's only 15 staff, all located in one office in Sydney, bar one of our staff members who's based out of Bathurst. We're happy to travel Australia-wide and come and talk to producers and people throughout the industry like yourselves. We also have our own in-house software development team who have developed our software over the last 30 years. That was one of the points I forgot to mention. We've been around for 30 years. We started off as CALM, computer-aided livestock marketing, and then when the internet came of age and we were able to upgrade our systems, we turned into AuctionsPlus. Now, half of our staff is made up of software developers who are all based in the same office with us in Sydney. The beauty of that is that if there's an issue or you're experiencing problems and we get a substantial amount of feedback from yourselves, I'm able to walk through to the next office, talk one of the software developers through that problem, and the velocity between them having heard about the problem and fixing that problem is really quick. Everything we do is in-house, which is invaluable, I think. That's a little bit about AuctionsPlus. We also don't just sell cattle or sheep. We've done horse sales, beehive licences, water auctions, real estate auctions, logging rights, Kelpie, working dog sales, lots of different things. Machinery sales, we do them about once a month. So getting back to the bread, hopefully I haven't lost you with my bread story, but just bear with me. What about the bread? Lots of buyers in one place at one time equals a strong demand for a product. The product integrity, which we try and manage as best as we possibly can, gives us a quality product. That then drives a competitive tension and the fear of missing out, the FOMO. What I'd like to close with is, if you have something valuable to sell, encourage competition through the provision of information to ensure product integrity and the introduction of new markets. Thank you.